Hello and welcome to the Stamperia Serve Vagabond and Fantasy World tutorial series designed for Scrap and Create. All of these products that are available on the Scrap and Create website are linked in the description box below, so you can purchase these products and follow along. Let's get into the tutorial. In today's tutorial, we are going to be working on page 3. The first piece you'll want to cut is 5.5 by 7.5. On the 7.5 inch side, we are going to score this at 1/2 inch on the top edge. I have another one of my 4-inch circles that I have cut using my die. Then I have a little tiny piece, it's 1.5 by 1.5 square. And on one of the sides, we're going to score this at 1/2 inch. Now for this piece, I have this 1.5 by 7 inches. For right now, I'm going to leave this as is. I am going to end up scoring this at the top, but I'm going to do it later. I'll show you why in just a few minutes. I have a piece that measures 5.5 by 4.5. On the 4.5 inch side, I'm going to score this at 1/2 inch on the bottom. Next, I have two pieces that measure 6 inches by 4.25. On the 6-inch side, I'm going to score at 1/2 inch on the right-hand side of one piece and at 1/2 inch on the left-hand side of the other piece. And then I have two pieces that measure 3.75 by 4.25. On the 3.75 inch side, I'm going to score this at 1/2 inch on the left-hand side of one piece and at 1/2 inch on the right-hand side of the other piece. Then I'm going to take my scissors and miter the ends of all of my 1/2 inch tabs on all of my pieces. I'm going to fold on my score lines, and then I will come back and show you where we are going to use the decorative edge dies. With my edge dies together, I am going to start on my 5.5 by 7.5 inch piece. And it's the opposite side as my tab. I will place the scalloped edge up against the bottom, and then I'm going to center the sides with these two little grooves. We did this on a previous flap in another tutorial video. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. With my 7-inch piece here, this is going to be a belly band that I'm going to be placing on the front. I see now that this is going to be trimmed. I thought it would, that's why I didn't score it. But I'm going to place this so that it actually runs right up against here. So I'm going to be using this. This is a third die from the set. It doesn't have those dots on it. It just has the cutting edge. So what I'm going to do here is mark the center of my piece, and I'm going to place my die right here, and I need to get some washi tape to hold this down, but I'm going to adhere this down here in the center and then run this through my machine. Now with this piece, I'm just going to quickly put it on here to see that it is okay. And then I'm going to mark this up here at the top, because now what I need to do, I need to bring my scoring board back in. And right where I did that mark, I am going to make a score line, and then I'm going to actually trim this down because it's definitely more than 1/2 inch. And then miter these ends. So now I have this, and it should fit perfectly on here, so we can put a photo mat under here later. Now for this next piece, it's going to be a bottom or a lower flap. So I'm going to take the edge past, or on the opposite of my 1/2 inch tab. I'm going to line up the scallops on the die with the edge of the paper and then centering it on the paper using these little grooves to center it, and then I'll run this through my machine. Next, I have my 2 flaps that are going to go on the side. So on the opposite sides of my tabs, I'm just going to put them both this direction to make it easier on myself. On this one, what I am going to do is use this second inner kind of groove and line that part up with the edges on the sides, and then using the scallops for the edge here, and I'll run this through my die cutting machine. So these are all the pieces that we needed to cut with the decorative edge. Now we're going to start putting them on the page. I'll start with the flap for the top. So taking the larger flap, we're going to apply our adhesive here on our 1/2 inch tab. And then I'm going to line up the score line of the piece with the top edge of my page. Now I'm just eyeballing this one. I am not measuring, but if you want yours to be exact, definitely go ahead and measure that. And then use your bone folder to burnish that down. Now I'm going to take the smaller flap here, and this one is going to go on the bottom, and I'm going to line up the score line with the bottom edge, but I'm also going to line up the sides with this upper flap here as well. So once I get that into place, I'm going to make sure everything is straight, and then adhere this down. Next, I'm going to take my little belly band piece, and I'm only going to apply my adhesive to that 1/2 inch flap at the top. I'm going to just place this down here where it's supposed to go, and then set this down so that it's lined up with the top edge. And I will probably come in here and add a piece of washi tape. Actually, I'm going to take a piece from that die that I had sitting here, just because I don't want this to get torn off. So I'm just going to tape that down for now. For my circle piece, and then this little teeny tiny part, I'm going to have this here as a closure, and it kind of is going to look like it's all part of the belly band. So I'm going to take my little tiny piece, apply my adhesive here, and then using my centering ruler, I am going to get this centered here. And I want to make sure that it's actually good. It's centered with my belly band on the top of the page, which it should be because it is also in the center of the page. Then I'm going to take my little circle piece, and I want this to kind of be in the center almost. So this piece is just going to be a really small closure. It's not that big. I've got plenty of room, so I can come up a little bit. So I'm just going to eye it until I like it. So let me see here. Mine is about 3/8 of an inch from that bottom edge. And I'm just going to draw some lines here so that I can line this up. But this really is the only portion that I'm going to put adhesive in. Just like the last one, I'm not going to put adhesive all the way to that line because I'm going to end up putting some decorative paper on there. And I want to make sure that I can get it up underneath of there. Then I'll just place this back on and adhere this down. So now with this, I'm going to put a magnet on the, oh, that's going to be lower than I thought. So it'll be here. That makes more sense. Oop, if I look at the curve. So I've got my magnet that's going to go on the back of here and it'll catch on my belly band. Now I'm going to open this and take my two smaller flaps here, and I'm going to have to decide now if I want them to be side by side or if I want them to be staggered. And I think I am going to stagger them like this. So I will take my adhesive and apply it to my 1/2 inch tab on the first one. And I'm going to adhere this one down here at the bottom, making sure that it's not too far into that score line. And then I'll take the second one and apply my adhesive to my tab. And this one I'm going to place at the top of the page on the left. And same thing, making sure it's not too far up into that score line. Now, just like on the first page, I should have probably put an 1/8 inch gusset on that flap, but I didn't even think about it until just now. So I will decide if I need to add that here in just a minute. I'm going to take my other flap that has my tab on the left, and I'm going to place it over here. So I've got my left hand tab that I'm putting on the right hand flap. And then I will put the second one on the upper flap in a mirrored position here at the top, right on this right hand side of this flap. Just past that score line though, so making sure that you're not in that score line so that this will still fold appropriately. So now we've got our two sets of flaps here. This one, then this one, and this. So with that belly band, I guess I could still do it, but because it's going to have a magnet, I don't technically have to have a gusset. It'll just have all that paper. So I think I'm gonna leave it just because I have that belly band on this one. So this is it for the front of the page. We'll go ahead and come to the back side. My first piece for the back is cut to 6 3/8 by 8 1/4. On the 6 3/8 inch side, I'm going to score this at 1/2 inch Down the right hand side, I have another piece that measures 5 inches by 5 7/8 of an inch. On the 5-inch side, I'm going to score this at 1/2 an inch on the right hand side. And then I have one piece that's 2.5 by 8 1/4. On the 2.5 inch side, I'm going to score this at 1/2 inch down the left hand side. Now I'm going to take my scissors and miter the ends on these 1/2 inch tabs. I did go ahead and fold on my score lines and burnish my folds. And now I'm going to use my decorative edge dies. So on the larger flap, I've got my tab already folded back. I'm actually going to be using the decorative edge die on the top and the bottom edge. So you want to make sure that your 1/2 inch tab is folded to the back side when you do this. And we're just going to line this up like we have been with the scalloped edge on the edge of the paper and then the sides of the die on the sides of the paper. And we're going to run this through the die cutting machine. Once I have the first side done, I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Again, just taking the time to line everything up and then run this through the die cutting machine. Once both sides are cut, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to trim off these little pieces. And I'm just going to kind of cut these in a little bit, and I'm going to leave it just like that. So you won't see it because it's already cut past those indentations. And then I'm going to take my decorative edge die here on this piece and use it on the opposite edge from my 1/2 inch tab. Then I'll run this through my die cutting machine and we'll go ahead and put these on the page. For my start of my page, I'm going to take my plain flap and apply my adhesive here to my 1/2 inch tab. Now this will eventually be a pocket or a tuck spot on the base of the page. So I'm going to place this here on the left-hand side, just lining up that score line with the edge of my page and then burnishing this down. I'll go ahead and add my little note to myself to remember to turn that into a pocket. Then I'm going to take my large flap here and make sure to put my adhesive on this whole entire tab section. So even those little tiny pieces at the ends that are cut, so just making sure that there is some adhesive so that it is adhered. This is going to go here on the right side of the page in the center. And I am just going to eye it because it is not too much smaller than the actual page itself. And then once it's on, I'll go ahead and burnish this down. And then with my final flap, I'm going to bring my centering ruler in here and I'm going to line up the ruler with the side of the page. You can mark this if you want to. I'm just going to use my ruler and place this down based on that. Right on the center, but making sure that that score line is lined up with the edge of that flap. So then this will close here. I will have a magnet here and a magnet here to keep that page closed. And you'll have that decorative part on the outside and then just a little bit on the inside. So that is it for page 3, and we are done with this tutorial. If you are just joining the tutorial series, don't forget to check out the links in the description box below, where you can click on those links. That'll take you to the Scrap and Create website to purchase all of the Stamperia or Vagabond papers that you will need to follow along with the tutorial to make your album. I'll see you in the next tutorial.